peace to the family. Uhuru Naamani Bargani. Power to the people. What's going on? I'm Ikemba of We Charge Colonialism, podcast and book club. Here with my brother.
Peace, everyone. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Perpetuation Educational Lecture Series. I know what's going on this morning.
Hey, when we off a cup for a while, we always rusty when we come back. So it's all good. But glad to be back doing this podcast. It's like the last 2 months have been busy, man, with a lot going on. Every month is busy, but particularly, May, June, seem like now that it's getting warmer, everybody's outside. But May is definitely a busy month with all of the gatherings such as African Liberation Day, Malcolm X Day. This month we had Juneteenth. There's a conference next week in Atlanta, Georgia, or outside of Atlanta, Georgia. There's the Black Radical Pan-African Black Nationalist Conference. So if you don't know about that, make sure that you register. At some point, I'm going to put a link in the chat. I think I should do that just in case people want more information about that. Our sister, she should be joining us soon. Waiting for her sister Natasha. But this is We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club, and of course, we out here having conversations about African people in the struggle for our liberation. Want to always have these discussions as colonialism pertains to African conditions around the world and what we can do about it. What we can do to change our conditions. So we like to bring stories and news stories, that is, discuss those from a African centered perspective, the point of view of the liberators, the ones who are trying to overturn the system, as well as looking at different books, analyzing different books, and helping us deepen our understanding of colonialism and what we need to do to liberate ourselves. So we're going to continue reading Stolen Black Labor, Stolen Black Labor by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Our sister has joined us. What's going on? You want to introduce yourself to the people? I was up here buying time for you, so I think I did a good job.
Thanks. Peace, everyone. My name is Natasha. I am a member of the Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition, an educator and community organizer, and I'm glad to be here.
Yes. It always feels good to be in the space with all of you. So I want to say peace to, man, everybody that's out there. Make sure that you liking and you're sharing the podcast and book club. Make sure you do that. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already subscribed. So we can get into the story, but last thing I'll say is this is Juneteenth weekend. Juneteenth is Monday. So I just want to encourage everybody to look and see what type of Juneteenth events are taking place. Make sure you're looking at Juneteenth events, though, that has a political component to it, because, Juneteenth ain't about just celebrating and saying, hey, victory, we have a victory, we won, and it's over. Because even our ancestors, when they were coming together for June, they were talking politics. They were talking about the failure of Reconstruction. They were talking about how the government is failing them and what they need to do to transform their conditions, right? So they knew that even though chattel slavery, was over, that there was a new form of exploitation and colonization that was taking place, and they needed to do something about that. So even today in 2023, we're still faced with, the same mortal enemy. And, we need to be very conscious of that and discuss what we're going to do to overturn that relationship. So with that being said, though, we're going to get into our weekly roundup. I don't know who's going to jump in and go first. I don't have it today, so it's on y'all too.
I'm gonna let Frank go first.
All right, no problem. I can go first. Forgive me for the background because I changed background. We have little change in office now, so that's what going on. I work from home, so changes are going. So I'm going to put some stuff behind there to close it up. All right, so we're going to talk about Juneteenth, as in Kimba already mentioned. So let me see if I can put it out here. There is, yeah, I'm going to read some few lines here. So this is Juneteenth here, where it have now become white supremacy holiday. Because I don't know if it is African people holiday, but it is now white supremacy holiday. And the reason why I call it white supremacy holiday is that is because it have been used, June to have been used as an economic source for white businesses. So the White House have tried by all means to make Juneteenth an economic hubs for white businesses, because on this day, Black people are going to go out to purchase white goods and then take it into their house. But it is not a day set aside to teach about the horrible situation Black people face in this country and up to now. So Joe Biden, even in this article, he mentioned it. You know, he put it into Black people faces and laugh about it. Joe Biden right here. So let's see here. So it says President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden will host a Juneteenth concert next week in a celebration of community, culture, and music. So, right, okay, let me read the whole thing and then before I can even talk about it. So it says the White House announced on Wednesday. So the concerts to be held on June 13 will be on the south lawn of the White House. During the event, the White House says it will uplift American art form that sound that sounds to the source of the American experience. I don't know what experience is that, as part of Black music. So artists that will be featured include, and their names are there, but let me see right here. So it says Juneteenth mark the last enslaved people in the United States learned they were free, which occurred on June 19, 1885. So that means either slavery was abolished 1865, but it did not end in 1865. All right, so they themselves are saying it here. So the Union soldier told enslaved Black people in Glovertown, Texas, knew of their freedom. It became a federal holiday in 2021. But this is why I want to say something right here. It says, this is a day of profound weight. This is a day of profound weight and profound power. A day in which we remember the moral sting, the terrible toll that slavery took on the country, and continue to take Biden said 2 years ago as he signed legislation. So let me take this out right here. This is what I want to talk about, because Biden mentioned, he said, as it continue to date. So in here, what I love about this article that Joe Biden spoke about is he did not mention about, the torture of African people on a plantation, okay, sexual exploitation, African women being used as sex farm, where white farmer will impregnate African people and then give birth and they use their own baby on a slave plantation. So that is what we call a sex farm. Now, but Joe Biden ignored all of that. He said Juneteenth marked African culture, African festival, like African music, African arts. So killing of African is an art. Torturing of African is an art. Burning their life is an act. Hanging them, lynching them is an act. Making them to work 24/7 around the clock is an act. So Joe Biden said this day was set aside to remember, okay, African acts. And what I hate about this article is that Joe Biden himself know that you can never call the Japanese to come and celebrate their death of what happened to them. You cannot call the Jewish to come and celebrate and dance for Adolf Hitler descendant. They will never do it. You will never call these people, the Indian, to come and celebrate what Christopher Columbus did to them, to come and sing and dance and rap for them. They will never do it. But Joe Biden used it, the Democrat used it to tell African people, yes, you guys should come and dance. Even though, as he said it, the churches still continue up to this time, but we still going to call you people to come and dance for us, to come and sing, to come and rap, all of these things. And then we're going to call you people to come and spend your money. That's why we make it a holiday, so that you people can come out and spend your money in our stores to buy our goods, and so that we can get money. It is a way of fusing, money into our economy. But under no circumstances do you think Japanese will agree to come to do such holiday for what will cost to them. Under no circumstances the Jewish will agree. Under no circumstances the Indian will agree to come and do such holiday, to come and celebrate such holiday, to go and put money into the people pocket who did horrible act against them. This is just another way that the Democrat, like Joe Biden, continue to put it in black people's face, because election time is coming 2024. Black people are going to vote again, thinking that these days was actually celebrated, okay, was actually being taught. All right. So, I mean, I just brought this out here for we African to think about this, and read that article and really try to understand, and analyze it of what Joe Biden, said in there, because they themselves, they know that African people are not yet still free. And that's why he said that it's still continuing up to today.
Hey, appreciate the story, because it's funny. I was having a conversation about this Juneteenth, and you gave some history and talked about June 19th being that date where the last group of Africans that were enslaved realized that slavery was over, and that they were free. I'm gonna pull my screen up for really quick, but you had also, you said something that also made me think, right? And I think a lot of our people have a problem with seeing it the same way that you put it when you talked about the Nazis, celebrating it. Imagine like the Jews and the Nazis celebrating or commemorating the atrocities that took place during World War II. But the problem is like, we don't look at the government of America in the same way, even though like it was the American government that instituted, made slavery legal. It was the American government that failed Black people during Reconstruction, and we can get into Democrats and Republicans, both. They were in cahoots. We can go throughout the whole history and look and see where the Democratic Party failed Black people, where the Republican Party failed Black people in the most heinous way. We don't have time for that. But I just wanted to show something really quick. This is for y'all knowledge right here. So if y'all can see this, New Jersey, the last northern state to end slavery. So the year, I'm gonna go down here. It says the date was June 19th, 1865. Juneteenth then is a holiday of celebration and a mournful remembrance of deep injustice and loss. It reveals the injustice of slavery and the legal repression of African-American freedom extending beyond the 19th century. But we must remember that there was still enslaved Black men and women in New Jersey even after Juneteenth. And so I'm just going to scroll down here. Where do you have the date at? right here. Slavery's final legal death in New Jersey occurred on January 23rd, 1866, right? When his first official act as Governor Marcus L. Ward of Newark signed a state constitutional amendment that brought about an absolute end to slavery in the state, right? And the people of New Jersey was actually struggling. They was fighting to continue slavery even after it all was, Civil War, everything was over and done with because they were profiting so much from the institution. And this is the North. So I just wanted to show that really quick. I don't know if Natasha, if you wanted to add anything before you go into your story.
Yeah, just really quickly. One, thank you for sharing that. Can you send me the link for that article? Because also I do work in New Jersey. We've been working for a couple of years now to build an enslaved African memorial to slavery in New Jersey. Obviously, building memorials costs a lot of money, so it's been taking a little bit of time, but also like during that time, learning a lot about slavery in New Jersey and specifically, slavery in the North, as people don't think, slavery happened in the North. But I think in terms of also what, Frank was saying in terms of the article, it also reminds me the way in which Juneteenth is being framed, like Frank brought up, it reminds me of how the same thing happens with Black History Month. So when we think about the way in which Black History Month has become more of a consumer holiday and less of a political of a time for us to really be politically strategic and use the time to really become more politically educated about our situation as African people. It's been framed as just something for us to get together and have celebrations, but we don't have that political aspect of it. It's been kind of watered down in that kind of way too. So yeah, so that's what I would have to add. I mean, it also reminded me of last year when there was that whole thing about Walmart selling those Juneteenth ice creams.
Yeah, what about, what was that, North Carolina, where they had the image of the white folks on the picture? You see that? I think it was North Carolina.
That was recent. And
that was recent. That was like a month ago or something, right?
And they said that they wanted to be inclusive. That's why they put white people on the Juneteenth. And these were Black people who did that to the flyer. Like it just shows, when we've been talking about like miseducation, like for you to think, what, for Black people, for a celebration of African people having, finally been become aware that they've been, freed of enslavement, we're going to use white people on the flyer. Like what?
Yeah, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised they use Juneteenth to replace Halloween, because they notice Black folks too are not distancing themselves from Halloween. They are saying that it's not Black people holiday. Like what is it bringing to Black people? So don't be surprised they use Juneteenth to replace Halloween, where they can make their money. So that is why Walmart and like printing T-shirt, printing days and setting it. And it's not that they really celebrating us, but hey, they're using it as a way to make money, to put money into their economy, go to their store and buy. So don't be surprised you see that to happen.
Yeah. So I'm gonna move on to my story, and I'm gonna share my screen. But maybe I should actually, before I share my screen, I'll share, because I have the image up, but I don't think I have the actual article up. So let me just send the actual article over here real quickly so I could share the screen.
Oh, and I'm going to put the link to the Google Drive. It's in the description, but I'll put the link to the Google Drive in the chat for anyone who wants to read along. We're reading Stolen Legacy. I'm talking Stolen Legacy, Stolen Black Labor. We'll be doing that in a few. So anybody who wants to follow along.
So let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. All right, let's see. Where is it? Oh, I should probably put it in a different window. Because I just realized if I share my screen on this window, it's not gonna. Oh, it should. Sorry, y'all. Bear with me for a second. As many times as I've worked to share screen on here, it's still okay. Yeah, here we go.
I was just talking to Frank about how we be rusty when we get back after a week or two. It's like, hold on,
I'm rusty on sharing the screen. So my article for today is called "How Africa Can Help the World," and it talks about climate change and also how to address how Africa can be, should be looked at as a way of addressing climate change and helping the world to address carbon emissions, reducing carbon emissions, and combating climate change. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of some of the quotes that were mentioned in the article. So let me go over to this section of the article here. So it says Africa has more renewable energy potential than the entire world needs, not just Africa itself, Shirley said. The theoretical potential of leapfrogging is there. The challenge is that's not at all how things work in reality. So they're talking about, Africa's potential for helping being like a place of renewable energy and, going past having to use fossil fuels and oil in this industrialization process and being able to like jump past that and go right into renewable energies and not have to go the route that the West did when we think about, or like the West or China or India, when we think about the way that they've industrialized using the same types of resources that produce a lot of carbon, like coal and oil and things like that. So then it goes on to say that Kenya is blessed with geothermal energy hydropower and a vast area in the north where the large wind farm is under construction. And it says that the country has the capacity to generate more power than it consumes. So, and then it also goes on to say that the cost for investment of renewable energy costs so much more is more expensive in Africa than it is in places like the United States or in Europe. And it says that a small fraction of the private climate investment goes to the 54 countries of the continent. So in terms of thinking about electric grids and building electric grids, they also mention in here what's it called? Let me get the name of it. They also mention in here a specific geothermal plant that exists within the continent. And so this geothermal plant is located in what they call Hell's Gate, which is like 50 miles northwest of the capital of Nairobi. And it's, termed to be, part of, the Kenya's or East Africa's renewable energy revolution. And so it sits on what is parkland. So the Hell's Gate National Park land. And the thing about it is, like, if you see what the picture looks like, and if you think about the parklands, we know that there's animals who live on that parkland, right? We know that these lands have been quote unquote what's the word I'm looking for? Have been quote unquote designated as places, right, that are supposed to be used for what do they call it? Conservation, and for, places where animals can be, so that, you can conserve and protect them. But yet what's happening, so I mean that whole thing, that's number one already like an issue in terms of what really is conservation, when we think about Africa, when we think about the legacy of colonialism and the way that they went up into Africa and took the land, and then later on created what they called these reservations after they went in and slaughtered millions of people and also animals. So that's another story. But so that's one thing that's happening. So these lands that were supposed to be places of conservation, but now are all of a sudden huge areas where they're drilling in the ground, because where Kenya is located, it's particularly on top of what they call geothermal activity, and they don't have to drill too far down into the land in order for them to access this geothermal power that gives this renewable energy. But I think that brings up the question about, one, drilling down into the land. What does that mean? What is that doing for the area? And especially when we know that, like, in Kenya, they're currently going through, the area geographically is going through this like tectonic shifts under the ground that's causing like a huge split within the land and within the ground. And so what is that drilling doing to what's already naturally going on? To how are people being displaced by creating what they're calling these huge geothermal hydropower areas? It also turns out that the company that is doing the drilling and who owns what's called, the company is called Kinjin, has used the quote unquote, what they call like the ignorance of the people in those areas, and to them not understanding their what their rights to the land are, and then also like the colonial legacies of land acquisition by foreigners and by Europeans, to get them to move off of their land, to use that land to build more of these geothermal producers of clean energy. And so the article also goes on to say, and there's so much more I want to say, but I'm not going to continue. It then goes on to say, after all of that, taking all of that into account, then it goes on to say that there's opportunity, because Kenya produces this clean geothermal energy. There's an opportunity for European, North American, and Chinese industry to come in. If they can set up shop on the continent, use the renewable energy that powers African grids, they could clean up their supply chains and bring down the price of electricity, including for African consumers. So basically what they're saying is that because, one, Kenya is able to produce this, geothermal energy, which I've already kind of laid out some of the issues with it. They're saying Africa could be the place where these countries, Europe, North America, and China, can come bring their industry, use up the the renewable energy in order for them to not use fossil fuels in their country, so that they can clean up the supply chain. And I mean, I think like just the thinking around this as a solution that Africa can offer the world is ridiculous. It's like, it just doesn't make any sense to me, because one, you're not addressing any of the things that I just mentioned in terms of the land ownership. We know that Kenya has one of the biggest slums in the world, outside of the two countries I don't remember in the Middle East. So, and that comes from the colonial legacies of the land grabs. We know that Europeans still own tons of the land. And then on top of that, on these lands, now you're creating this type of, geothermal, these kind of geothermal plants that one, we don't know what it's doing to the land when you're drilling down in an area that's already experiencing like natural tectonic shifts. And then you want to say, well, we want other people from outside to come and use this to be able to clean up their energy, their supply chains. And that's how, Africa can be helpful to the world. And then through that, it's going to help Africans and African consumers, right? Looking at, the other thing is, just this idea of looking at African people as consumers and consumers of everything that, the world has to throw at them or, wants them to consume. And then it goes on to say that the global north needs to decarbonize their supply chain. You cannot address the climate change question and meet your net zero without decarbonizing manufacturing. So basically telling them to bring their manufacturing there to decarbonize their own processes, as if these countries couldn't, make decisions on their own within their own countries of how to decarbonize. And then lastly, I'll say that then the article finally goes on to say that how that this whole idea brings up the question now that, instead of saying, how can the world help Africa, we want to say, how can Africa help the world decarbonize? And I think, it's so ridiculous. This whole thing is just ridiculous. I just think I don't see there clearly is no criticality in thinking of how to address climate change in a way that makes sense for Africa. And I think what's being put forth doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Just quickly, I was, as you were talking, I'm just thinking, as a historian, I'm always just like, yo, I've seen this before. It's just some of the things that I'm always concerned about is how Europe has historically been dependent on Africa and other indigenous people for their labor and for their resources. And so that hasn't changed. There's sort of been this period where, they've always exploited, but there's been this period where there hasn't been this need for like a mass migration. That's something that I'm looking out for as the economy begins to change, technological innovations. Africa is going to present all of these opportunities to generate wealth, which means that you're going to see, in this day and age, you don't really have to travel and be in a place. But at the same time, I think like when where there needs to be people though on the ground, that's going to open up the opportunity for colonizers to be like, all right, let's get into Africa. And once they come, hey, they're going to start coming with families and start, building families, settling, buying land. And you're going to see sort of like this gentrification process that happens in the community. Not saying that that's not already taking place, but I think it may begin to increase, escalate as things change. Because every time I'm turning around, I'm reading stories about resources in Africa that Europeans are like, hey, we need this for this new transformation that is taking place with the economy and all of these innovations and like this shift to try to clean energy. So it's a lot, man. Well, Frank, if you want to say anything before we move on, go right ahead.
Yeah, let me just add something. In relation to slavery and colonization, also one of the greatest crimes committed by white people, by European, is to go on the African continent to tell African people who one time in their life, they didn't have to go to school to become an agriculturalist, to become farmers, but to go there to tell them to put agriculture in curriculum where people have to choose how they can grow food for themselves. All right? But they make English compulsory. Told them, no, you have to learn English in order to become great. So don't do agriculture. Don't feed yourself. We will feed you. That has been one of the greatest crimes committed. And we African, we took it. Why did they do that? Like Natasha clearly put it, was to get hold of the land. I mean, these people, they are so sophisticated in the sense that they know how to do things that you won't think that what they are doing is going against you. First of all, in order to make the people to leave the land so that white can come and occupy the land, to exploit the land, is to convince them that you cannot be an agriculture. It has to be major. That's why, I mean, they brought about agriculturalists, like degree in agriculture. You have to have a degree. You have to have a certificate. How can you have a certificate in order to be able to feed yourself? So are you telling me all Africans should go, in order for us to feed ourselves, we should go in classroom to get white man certificate? That's the only time we can have idea on how to farm. So they did all of these things to get out of the land so that they can occupy the land. But when they were coming to occupy the land, they did not give us certificate. When they were coming to exploit our land, they never gave us certificate. When they were coming to take our mineral resources, to steal our resources, to drain our resources, our mine, our diamond, our lithium, our gold, they never gave us certificate. But they told us, in order for you to mine your own land, your gold, your diamond, you have to get certificate. You have to show certificate. But they never give us certificate. That's been one of the greatest crimes ever committed. And let me say this before I even close to go to the next page, or before we can continue. People always say, we need foreigners as investors. We need investors to come on the African continent. And it is the ignorant African that always says that. We need investors. Who are the investors? Americans are not investors, because Americans been on the continent for over plus years. Chinese been there. European been there. What have they done? And we are still calling these white folks investors. Who are the investors? The African in the diaspora are the investors. Because you know what? Africa is their home. The continent is their home. There is nowhere they can carry their money. If you take American on the African continent, why he's going to take the money? He's going to bring it right back to America. If you take European, he's going to bring the money right back to America. He's going to bring the resources taken from Africa to bring it to Europe and to America and to China and to Australia. And that's what they have been doing. But African in the diaspora, they will never go on the African continent and then take the resources and bring it back in Europe or in America. I mean, that can be a clear example. Africans that have left from here, now go on the African continent, and they have their businesses there. Have they taken the money back to America to come and do what? That is to tell us there is no investor other than African.
All right.
That, yeah, for sure. For sure. And I also just wanted to add one quick thing in terms of what Kimber was saying, but also it connects directly to what Frank was saying, that in building all of these geothermal producing plants, the people who are in Kenya who live around that area have said that they have people who are graduating, who are geologists, who have all of the skills that, who are engineers, but they're not employing them. They're giving the jobs to people who are not from there. So, I mean, this all goes back to exactly, what we were talking about here, right? This one need to tell you to get your certificate to do this. But then even after you get your certificate to do that, guess what? You're not the one who's going to get the job from being there.
Yeah, when just every time I think about what they call development, I just think about all of those people who suffer, who this so-called development is happening at the expense of, right? There's going to be millions of that, particularly Africans. There's, other oppressed people as well that don't even benefit from this relationship. But Africans in particular are put at the bottom of the social ladder because from the very foundation of the system, the African has been made the slave. He's been made the slave to build up this system. They even looked at other groups of people and put them on a pedestal, a higher pedestal than the African. If you were African, you were at the bottom of the evolutionary chain. So, and that's, purposely done. And so, just thinking about what's happening today, every time, we talk about these stories, with the geothermal, the clean energy, any sort of technological change, innovations and changes that's being made in the economy for the sake of progress. Progress for who? You know, and the way these conversations always end with Africans always getting the short end of the stick. And this is why we have to like really take charge and really transform we have to, first of all, develop a system that's going to benefit African people. We have to break away from the system that we're part of now, because we're all a part of it, right? So we have to find a way to develop systems for ourselves. But the other thing, just so we can go into the book, was just like Juneteenth again, Juneteenth weekend. Make sure you know it. Hey, have some fun, go out there and have fun, but make sure you're a part of something that's like really talking about action, it's talking about building, because we can't be celebrating as if everything is over, right? But I think that we should, you know, find a time where we can, you know, laugh and enjoy each other's company. But remember, there's still work to be done. So with that being said, let's go into the story. We got a little time to get into it. Hey, these weekly roundups, man, they get a little, intense. All right, so I'm going to be reading from page 3. I think that's where I stopped off. What page is this? Page 2, actually. I want to start here at the top, first paragraph on page 2. And let's get into it. So this is Stolen Black Labor, Point of View of the Slave, Chapter 1. In U.S. bourgeois economics, the wealth stolen from African people is not mentioned at all, and the rise of capitalism and the amassing of tremendous wealth in the capitalist centers is ascribed to moral right, personal genius, and racial superiority. Following this lead, the left and working class of European and North American society had failed to come to terms with the real history of the world, the real basis of capitalist wealth. For this reason, the North American working class has never raised itself beyond narrow contention with the ruling class over income levels. And North American working class, basically, he's talking about white folks, Europeans. And indeed has come out in unity with the ruling class when contending against the revolutionary anti-colonial struggles that challenge the basis of U.S. imperialism. This narrow economism has rightly been called imperialist economics by Lenin. African workers in the U.S., on the other hand, because of our historical relation to the rise of capitalism, because of our structural position in the present-day society, because of our conscious determination to overthrow domestic colonialism, represent the leading force for revolution in the U.S. and are therefore objectively the leadership for the North American white working class. How does the political economy of African people, the world from the point of view of the slave, challenge and transform the dominant political economy advanced by the North American left? For Karl Marx, whose insight led to a brilliant summary of the class struggle of European society, the slave trade and the exploitation of Africa was the first cause, the basic primitive accumulation which led to the rise of the capitalist class in Europe. He said, quote, "The discovery of gold and silver in America, the extirpation, enslavement, and entombment of mines in the aboriginal population, the beginning of the conquest and looting of the East Indies, the turning of Africa into a warring for the commercial hunting of black skins, signalized the rosy dawn of the era of capitalist production. This idyllic proceedings are the chief momentum of primitive accumulation, the necessary condition for capitalist production. And direct slavery is just as much the pivot of bourgeois industry as machinery, credits, etc. Without slavery, you have no cotton. Without cotton, you have no modern industry. It is slavery that has given the colonies their value. It is the colonies that have created world trade, and it is world trade that is the precondition of large-scale industry. Thus, slavery is an economic category of the greatest importance. Without slavery, North America, the most progressive of countries, will be transformed into a patriarchal country. Wipe out North America from the map of the world, and you will have anarchy, the complete decay of modern commerce and civilization. Because cause slavery to disappear, and you will have wiped America off the map of nations. And While the cotton industry introduced child slavery in England, it gave in the United States the stimulus to the transformation of the earlier, more or less patriarchal slavery into a system of commercial exploitation. In fact, the veiled slavery of the wage earners in Europe needed for its pedestal slavery, pure and simple, in the New World. And that's a white man saying that. Even these truths, as laid out by Karl Marx, the father of scientific socialism, have been ignored by most subsequent Marxists. The weakness of Marx's own perspective was that he was a European who wrote from the perspective and understanding of primitive accumulation of capital as it impacted on Europe's economy and consciousness. Marx used primitive accumulation, the wealth stolen from Africa, to explain European history, but demonstrated only passing interest in the actual process of African history and a relationship of African history and struggle to the development of capitalism. For Marx, the events transpiring in Africa and the African slave labor colonies were merely an abstraction. This is why he could describe capitalism as a progressive development in history. He would not have been able to do so if he were writing from Angola or as an enslaved African in South Carolina. I can stop right there. Did y'all want to build on any of that? But
I think a couple things. I think just building from where we stopped backward. This key part where he says that this would just say where you were, Kimba. This part where it says this is why he could describe capitalism as a progressive development in history. He would not have been able to do so if he were writing from Angola or as an enslaved African in South Carolina. And this points specifically to, one of the things that we've been talking about when we talk about decolonization and when we talk about fighting neocolonialism. We always, at least on this podcast, talk about the importance of education, and not just the importance of education, but this shows the importance of African-centered education. How you can get an education in school, or you can go to school and have some schooling and learn some things, but that will, because it's always from a Eurocentric point of view, just like Karl Marx as a European. And I don't know if I would agree to say that, that is a weakness of Marxism. I think that just is what it is. This is a white guy writing from what other perspective really can a white guy take up beside a white person's perspective? We have to understand that we need to be writing and doing from our perspective as he's describing here. It's fine for white people to talk about their stuff from their perspective. It's not fine for us as African people to talk about the stuff from white people's perspective. We need to always be having our own perspective, learning and teaching from our own center as African people. And so I think, his quote here really exemplifies that when he talks about what it also connects to what we were talking about, having our own social theories, having our own way of thinking and writing about situations that is from an African center that places African people as the subjects of what's happening, not as, just objects that are on the periphery and just have, small things within history that lead to other, to Europeans, larger history. So I think that this point really raises up the importance of African-centered education and how that needs to be what we're doing, not just in America, but also across the diaspora and on the continent. And I think too, when he talks about how industrialization industrialization needed slavery. And that's one of the things that, because a lot of people aren't taught that, like he mentions in this section, that these countries, when we were just talking about it now, right, we think about like countries in Africa or, countries in the Caribbean, and we think about this push for them to quote unquote be developed to follow this, capitalistic industrialization trajectory, right, of having factories or, building factories, housing factories, being places that produce consumer goods in order for them to be able to develop an economy and, raise the standard of living. when you don't realize the reason, you're thinking you're following the trajectory of the West and, America and Europe and industrialization to get to where they are. But you don't realize that the only reason, like he's saying, that they are where they are or they got to where they are is because of enslavement. If you don't have mass free labor through enslavement like they did, you're not going to accumulate the type of wealth that you think that you're going to accumulate by going through this industrialization process. It's just not going to happen, because you would need to colonize, go around the world and colonize and get other people's resources. And then on top of that, you would need to also get other people to enslave to produce the things that you need for your market and for your industry to grow. And you don't have that, and you're not going to have that. So, I think when we're thinking about how African countries, and other countries in the Caribbean can advance, we need to really think about something other than this industrialization process of having factories and, creating these particular types of jobs and all that other stuff, because we have a misunderstanding of how and or maybe we're just ignorant to, because of the lack of, information and miseducation, to how these countries became wealthy. It's not because they just had the Industrial Revolution. No, it's because of enslavement and colonialism.
Oh man, yeah, appreciate it. Frank, you wanted to add anything?
Let me just thank you, Natasha, for that great input. Just yesterday, my mom, and I, we were talking, and she asked me the question, why are white people so rich than black people? I mean, exactly, that was the question. And I started telling her, if you really look at history, white people were not rich, black people were rich. And I started telling her about, for example, Mensa Musa, and Queen Nzinga, Ya Ashantiwa, and all of these things. I started telling her, I was like, white people were never rich. Black people have been rich, but our culture, our history have been misrepresented by the same white people. Like Natasha said, it is good that white people write according to their perspective, but it is not right for we black people to take the white people perspective, because it's never going to fit into that equation or into that formula. And I began to narrate to her the reason why they are rich. It is because in history, black people have always dehumanize other people. Okay, lies, they fear of lies, they torture people, they kill people. Okay, and that's how they have getting rich. They exploit people, and that's how they are getting rich. I was telling them, look at the Middle East. Who did the Middle East at that? It's them. Why did they do it? Because they want to exploit the people's resources. And I was telling them, who did Libya? Look at Libya. Who did it? And I was telling her, look at DRC since 1884 Berlin Conference. Who did it like that? It is them. You see, I started naming some places to her, and I told her, and the reason why for these things is to exploit the resources. And I told her the reason why there was slavery was to exploit black people, to sell black people. Okay, they make black people out of commodity, where once upon a time, black people were valued more than gold, more like diamond. And I was telling her these things. So I was like, so this is where their resources came from. This is where their riches came from. And I'm glad Marxism also measured in there that, they got all this wealth because of slavery, and because of colonization, all of those things. So that's how these people, okay, have gotten their worth. So it is unto us, like Natasha said, not to even take their perspective. Okay, we should write, we should narrate according to our perspective and according to what we think it is the right direction for us.
Hey, I'm seeing Conrad, Miss Hattie in the building. Hey, what's going on? Got excited, got a little excited. I seen her, but yeah, appreciate everything that's being said. One thing that's standing out, I think the whole analysis is spot on. But going back to this, and Natasha, you really deep in this. This is why he could describe capitalism as a progressive development in history. And this is something we have to be very conscious of. I mean, Malcolm always talked about this as well in his way. The colonizer is going to he's going to be an apologist for capitalism, despite everything that the exploitation, the genocide that has taken place, right? Coming from his point of view, it's always going to be looked at as progress. Anything that has happened in regards to, people who may have lost their lives and had their land taken, it was all in what do they call that? Like the good outweighs the bad, the good kind of offsets the bad. Like this is how the bourgeois is always talking about the advancement of capitalism. There's a quote by Theodore Roosevelt, who was the president, and he talked about how he wish I had time to pull this quote up. He said, I don't want to hear nothing about any sentimentalists who are talking about, what happened to the indigenous people, this bad thing. He said this land had to be won. It had to be taken by the European. This is Theodore Roosevelt. Next time I'll have this quote, but this is the type of thinking, this idea of manifest destiny, right? But this is the bourgeois. They're always going to, when the European was coming to the Americas, the English in particular, it was this idea that they had opportunity to own land, all this land that was controlled by another group of people, but they looking at, it's all of this land as if people weren't there, right? Hey, it's all of this land in America. And so, but the point is that they take the land, but for the bourgeois, hey, they weren't utilizing the land. They weren't utilizing the land, so we could stake claim to that land because they weren't doing anything with it, right? The idea that if you work for someone, if you were employed or landless, you were looked down upon by the English. So there was this idea that you had to have property, land ownership. And so even today, and the reason I'm bringing this up, because you have centuries of this type of indoctrination where it's to the point where we look at the producers, which are the laborers, the people who are producing everything. We look down on the producers of everything. And we look at the entrepreneurs, or the business people, as if they are the ones producing. And they're not. It's always been the African working class, which is the point even Karl Marx had made. And this is from a European has even made this analysis as we look into this text. So I think it's important that we do take the point of view of the enslaved African and understand this relationship that we have from the European through our own lens, our own experience. So with that being said, we got a couple minutes though. I wanted to see if y'all had any last points before we close this thing out.
Remember, I did have something to say, but it slipped my mind.
Okay, all right. But again, this We Charge Colonialism. Make sure y'all liking and sharing and subscribe if you haven't. Like, share, subscribe. I've seen some of y'all, some of our peoples who are here every time. I'm seeing y'all popping up. And, I just want to say excuses too. I mentioned it earlier. Like the consistency with Saturday has been really tough. And maybe, we can record some of these beforehand and post it when we're not able to be here. Because even next Saturday, I think we won't be on next Saturday. There's the conference down in Georgia. Are you going to that, Natasha? You're on mute.
I won't be there. I wish.
Okay.
I decided too late as to whether or not I was gonna go.
Okay. All right. So again, I want to appreciate everybody. If y'all didn't have any last thoughts, we're gonna close out. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. My comrade, thanks for tuning in. Comrade Matsamela, president of the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, is on. Wasn't expecting my comrade on. I'm happy to see you too. And of course, hey, Comrade Sayero, who's always on. Always appreciate you, everybody that's out there. Continue to tune in. Again, we won't be on next Saturday, but the following Saturday we will be back. continuing this. Sugar, always appreciate you. And look out, I'm still doing the blueprint for Black Power, right? Again, just some scheduling conflict, but I'm still doing the blueprint for Black Power. Frank, you gonna be on tomorrow?
Yes, I'm going to be on tomorrow. So again, just a quick announcement. The Friday show have been changed from Friday to Sunday. So for now, we're going to be having the Friday show on Sunday at 1 p.m. So tune in, come and get the word of God. That's the word of God. Okay. Come and be healed. Come and be
healed. Man. That's how you doing it now. Oh man, so that's tomorrow. So make sure y'all tune into that as well. Appreciate y'all. So we're gonna close out at this point. Let's see if I can do it right this time. I'll be trying to produce our producer. I just seen our producer. You know, we need our producer back. Come on back.
Yes, come back.
Come back.
All right, signing out. Peace, everybody. Hoodoo.
Peace.